Hey everyone, Rob here. What you're about to hear is the first part of a very lengthy discussion that I and guest Jackson Smith had on The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions. In the interest of not subjecting you all to a 3-hour plus podcast, we've gone ahead and broken this up into two parts. This one is a little bit, significantly longer than the second half because we covered we talked about Wonder Woman 1984 a little bit, and that released on HBO Max and in theaters. We talked about the franchise as a whole and touching on the Enter the Matrix video of the game and the Animatrix a little bit as well. So we're going to go ahead and listen to the first half of the conversation on The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, this one focusing on The Matrix Reloaded. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yanis Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On the show, we democratize the film criticism conversation by bringing on fans and critics alike to dig into their personal connection to a current or classic release. You can find more episodes of the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcatchers, as well as crookedtable.com. And this week, we're going to be talking about The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, the Matrix sequel avalanche of content that came out in 2003, basically. And of course, we had to bring back to the show who is fast becoming our threequel guy, Jackson Smith. Welcome back to the show.
I'm glad to hold the honorary title of threequel guy. I love me some threequels.
Well, because we were on here talking about Revenge of the Sith last year, and then
yes.
I announced the Harry Potter series that we're just about done with now, finally. And really ill-timed considering everything with She Who Must Not Be Named in this year.
Yeah, I'm so glad we did that right before all that came out, or else the conversation would have got really uncomfortable. Yeah.
So you took Prisoner of Azkaban again, the third chapter there, and here we are now talking about Reloaded and the third film, Revolution. So before we get to all of that, tell people listening that haven't heard any of your previous episodes on the show a little bit about who you are, what you're up to these days.
Sure. Well, yeah, I am a podcaster, filmmaker, writer. So I do all sorts of stuff in the industry. I direct. I'm currently writing some web series for the DC Kids channel. So we do shows like Batman 101 and Building with Batman. So that's kind of what I've been doing over the last couple of months is working on those shows. And yeah, just directing personal projects on the side. My roommates and I, we've been getting really antsy in quarantine. So a couple months ago, we just started making like a short film, just kind of in-house, just with, starring me and my roommate, Chris. Adam's actually probably editing it right now as we speak. And that's been a lot of fun. It's just been really great to get back behind the camera again, because it's been hard to do that with a pandemic going on outside,
right? For sure.
But yeah, Adam and I also have our own YouTube channel where we post video essays and podcasts. Not so much recently. Again, we've been super swamped with other stuff, but we're hoping in the new year to get some more content up there.
So obviously, The Matrix is a Warner Brothers property. You're working with DC, and we're dropping this episode just a few days before Christmas, where we just learned yesterday, as of this recording, that Wonder Woman 1984 is going to be released simultaneously in theaters and on HBO Max. So what is your, as a inside DC person, what is kind of your take on all of that?
Well, I think this is first of all, I think this is probably coming from the studio because I think they are. I think they probably looked at the box office numbers from Tenet, and they probably looked at the COVID numbers that are rising in the U.S. right now, and I think they made a decision to go forward in continuing to keep theaters alive and open, which I think it's really important right now. If you can do it safely, like if you have proper safety precautions in place, and if the theaters are open in places where cases are not skyrocketing, which is honestly, as of this recording, not a whole lot of places have places
seriously.
where cases aren't skyrocketing, but so I really appreciate that they're still trying to do that while also saying, hey, everybody is going to be at home for Christmas and they're going to want to watch a big movie with their family. So let's give them the option to safely watch it on HBO Max. I think it's a good best of both worlds scenario. Although honestly, I really don't even know how it's going to turn out because we're recording this podcast in November, and by the time it comes out, for all we know, all the theaters could be closed down again, and this could all be a moot point. So it's a tricky game that I think all of the studios are playing right now, because it's like at the end of the day, you want to keep the theaters at least open so that they don't close and the buildings get demolished, because nobody's gonna rebuild them afterwards, and you're gonna need screens to put movies on. But you know, at the end of the day, nothing matters more than human life and keeping people safe. And if it's just not plausible to safely put people in a room for 2 hours during a pandemic, then, you know, what needs to be done has to be done. And it's really tragic, but I've been pretty optimistic about just how theaters are, just the survival of theaters going forward. Like I think the theatrical experience is something that's so precious to people, and even if it comes back in a bit of a limited capacity, I really don't think it's going away. I think if Wonder Woman 2024 or whatever the next movie is going to be is definitely going to come out in theaters and probably going to make $1 billion whatever it does. So
yeah, I feel like I've been looking at Wonder Woman 1984 as sort of the litmus test, because, you know, we both agree that it would have essentially been the big hit of the summer. Obviously, it's certainly one of the most anticipated. And I think that this is, as you said, probably the best of both worlds, and that at least it still accounts for theaters. They're still at least making the appearance of trying to take theaters into account. Like you said, whether or not they're actually open to screen Wonder Woman is another issue entirely. But I think had they just cut the theaters out and gone straight to HBO Max, I feel like that's would have been almost at least to me, would have felt kind of like a death knell for theaters. But the fact that they're including that in the plan, I feel like that's at least given me something to hold on to and hope for. Whenever you know, if the world ever comes back around again, but yeah, so hopefully that will happen. But in the meantime, I guess it makes more sense than kicking it another 6 months down the line, because studios and everybody wants their profit share of these you know, $200 million movies. So it's like you can only hold it for so long.
Yeah, I just hope theaters are back in full swing by this time next year, because I want to see Matrix 4 on the biggest screen possible.
Yeah,
that is sure. That is going to be like an IMAX 3D experience, and we need to at least keep theaters alive so that we can have that, whatever it's going to be. So
just get us there, Hollywood. Yeah. But yeah, no, that's the perfect segue. As I'm actually dropping this the exact day a year before a Matrix 4 hits theaters. So when you're listening to this, if you're listening to it the day it drops, 1 year from now, according to plan, again, everything's subject to change now. Matrix 4, whatever it will be titled, will be released somewhere. Let's hope theaters, but released somewhere is the plan at the moment. So I think before we get into these movies specifically, obviously we talked about the first one before. I had my brother Freddie on, and we did a 2.5 hours talking about that. I actually split. That was back when I was splitting long episodes in half, and then I was just like, take the hell with it. So it's essentially my favorite movie, the first Matrix. Where do you stand on the Wachowskis overall, and then specifically this franchise?
My dad, of course, showed me Matrix when I was in high school because I got really into like sci-fi and cyberpunk when I was a freshman, and he was like, "Oh, cool! I have all these awesome movies to show you." Like he showed me Minority Report, he showed me Blade Runner, and he showed me Matrix, and I didn't like it when I saw it. I mean, I thought the action was cool, and I was like, "Oh, this is really fun to look at," but I was like, it was like a little too heady. And there was just like a little too much exposition and stuff going on for me at the time. But I think it's the older and wiser that I've gotten as a human being, the more I have loved these movies, to the point where, yeah, I think the first Matrix is probably in my top 10 ever. I think it's probably, I think it is legitimately like a perfect movie. I don't think there's anything about that movie that should change or could be better. I think it's just like a stone cold classic. And I love it. I mean, I love how complex the themes are. I love how well-rounded the world is. I love how it just smashes together all of these different styles of filmmaking and all of these different genres and blends it all into something that feels like totally unique. I'm obsessed with it. I think it's so cool. And I think the sequels were very much the same way. Like of course, when my dad showed me Matrix, he also showed me the other two, and I liked them even less. I was like, oh, these are even more confusing. These are even more convoluted. But over the last several years, and specifically on this most recent rewatch that I did for this podcast, feel like I can pretty confidently say that I think the Matrix trilogy is on par with the original Star Wars trilogy, if not actually maybe a little bit better. Yeah, no, I mean, I know that's like a bold statement, but it's like
a bold statement.
Both are instances. Yeah, well, it's like both are instances where you have supremely, it's either one or two in the case of the Wachowskis, but like supremely talented, genius filmmakers who got basically all the money in the world to do whatever the hell they wanted and pulled it off. And that's such a rarity. I feel like that's probably going to be the case with James Cameron's next slate of Avatar movies, but it's like it only something like that really only happens once every several decades. So and I think the Matrix trilogy, it's a great series of movies. It all strings together so well. It feels so cohesive. All three of the movies, and we'll talk about this more on the podcast, but all three of them have their own like unique personalities, and they're kind of their own unique styles, and are good for their own reasons. And yeah, no, I love them. I think they're great. And I love the Wachowskis too. Cloud Atlas is another one of those movies that I think is just a classic. I think that movie is amazing and unbelievable that it exists. Even if they don't always hit the mark, like I wasn't the biggest fan of Jupiter Ascending. They're always doing something interesting, and they're so smart and such incredible filmmakers. And I'm just so thankful that even though their stuff has been not always well received by critics and or audiences, that studios continue to give them money to do what they see in their head, because it's sometimes you'll end up with Jupiter Ascending where it's like everybody's kind of like, oh, that was weird. And then sometimes you end up with something like Sense8, where it becomes like a cultural phenomena and beloved by so many people. So it's like I love the Wachowskis. I think they're a treasure, and I do think the Matrix is their magnum opus. I think it just as a thing, it's incredible. I'm so excited to talk about it.
So I agree with a lot of what you said. So I saw The Matrix. I was 16 when it came out. So I saw it in theater, actually almost 16 when it came out. So I was in high school when it came out. And then, I had that experience where it's basically the movie that made me a cinephile. It's the one where I realized, oh, this was influenced by this, and this is symbolic of this. It's like, it's the one that cracked the code for me. And that's why I consider it my favorite movie or one of. And so I had that experience that it broke my little 16-year-old brain, the big twist and what the Matrix actually is, because I'd never seen anything like that before. It was always like Batman movies or even Jurassic Park or like things like that, which are also great movies. But not nearly as cerebral as The Matrix is. And then I had 4 years of anticipation to the sequels. So I was much more. I didn't get to see them for 4 years, obviously. So when they did arrive, I feel like the expectations were so high that I enjoy the sequels. I don't enjoy them as nearly as much as you do, but I do think they're really interesting films. And I feel like they have a similar reputation to like when we talked about Revenge of the Sith, where they came out and people were like, oh, this is lumped in with, this is not worth it. It's just the one, we're not going to, it's just dismissed basically out of hand. I feel like a lot of people are put the first Matrix on a pedestal and then you're like, and then they made sequels. No, we don't need to talk about this. And I feel like there's so much in here to talk about. And the Wachowskis, like you said, 100% agree, are so ambitious. And like, you hear the term visionary thrown in a lot in marketing from the visionary filmmaker of blah, blah. It's like, but these are filmmakers that actually earn that title. Like
are visionary. Yeah,
exactly. I love, despite its flaws or whatever, but I love Speed Racer. I love Cloud Atlas. Bound, which is the one before Matrix, is also
I've
a great
never
movie.
actually
The only
seen
one that
I've heard it's really good.
You should check it out. Yeah, because it's that small indie movie that they made before they were given the chance to make Matrix. And then since then, Warner Brothers, I think specifically, has been like, what, 100 million, 150 million? Here you go. Figure it out. You gave us Matrix.
Sure, yeah.
yeah. And we've gotten some wild shit because of that. And I that's why whenever they come out with something, whether it works or it doesn't work, and I'm in the camp that Jupiter Ascending didn't really work, I still would prefer that over another Transformers or another, whatever. It's got a lot more interesting ideas going on and I love the Marvel movies than most of the MCU. You know what I mean? I think they are unique in that way. And it feels like the kind of filmmaker that Hollywood doesn't normally put money behind as much anymore. So whenever they come out with something, I tend to want to support it.
Dude, I was talking about this with my roommate after we watched it. The like something like the Matrix trilogy would just never happen nowadays.
Yeah.
Like it would never, like a studio would never, ever give that much money to an original idea, like something that's not based off of any IP or doesn't have any brand recognition, but is also that like ambitious and over the top and crazy. Like what you mean? Like all the humans are like batteries in this futuristic machine world? Nah, nobody's gonna pay to see that shit. Like, it's like, but that they did back then in 1999. They did give them the money to do it, and it resulted in, I think probably one of, if not the best action movie ever made, and at least in my opinion, one of the best movie trilogies of all time. So I think it's proof. I think it's proof that if you have really, really smart visionary filmmakers and trust them, then you end up with really excellent stuff that people do go see. And so I just wish that studios did that more, because I'm tired of like Lion King 2 and the Alice in Wonderland 2
and what pisses me off,
another Batman movie. Like,
I mean, I love Batman movies, but it's like, we just Ben Affleck literally it just hung up the cape. Kind of. I mean, we have the Justice League Snyder cut, so who knows what the hell's going on. But I feel like the only filmmaker nowadays, and again, Warner Brothers backed, that could pull something like that off is Christopher Nolan. I think that things like, I still haven't seen Tenet because I'm not going to a theater right now, and it's yet available. So for home viewing. But something like Inception is maybe one of the only big blockbuster expensive movies that feels like it's trying to challenge the audience a little bit with the concepts that it's bringing up, and like the dream within dreams and how they jump and like how time fluctuates, and some of those, like it actually pushes the audience to pay attention and not just let it all wash over them mindlessly. Like 95% of movies do these days. But I think Nolan's one of the only ones left.
And Cameron. I mean, like, I think I have a feeling. I have a feeling the Avatar sequels are gonna kind of be like the Matrix sequels, in the sense that, like, I think they're gonna be really cool. I have a fair amount of confidence that whatever he's cooking up in his head is gonna be really awesome. But I have no idea how people are going to react to it. It'll be very interesting to see, because they're also like Disney is hoping to make those like the Christmas movies for the rest of the decade, basically. And I'm like,
pretty much.
We'll see about that. But I think they'll be good. I think they'll be pretty cool. I've learned never to bet against James Cameron, so we'll see.
For sure. I think we're just about ready to delve into these two movies. So before we do that, let's listen to a little bit of the trailer, I guess, for Matrix Reloaded right now.
All of our lives, we have fought this war. Tonight, I believe we can end it.
That's a nice trick.
Upgrades.
Mr. Anderson. Surprised to see me?
So now he's found a way to copy himself. Now there's more than one of them. A lot more.
The machines are digging. They're boring from the surface straight down to Zion.
There is only one way to save our city. Neo.
That was a little bit of the trailer for The Matrix Reloaded from 2003, directed by the Wachowskis. And I also love the fact that this is one of the, I guess the Pirates movies did this, but it's one of the only instances in the last couple decades that we've seen two movie sequels filmed back to back. You know, we had Back to the Future back in the day, Lord of the Rings, these Pirates, and then Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. But these are, I think, unique in that they came out the exact same year. So Reloaded came out in May, Revolution's in November, and they just let people stew for those 7 months. So what are your thoughts on, first of all, I remember a quote that someone said in Piece of the Marketing. I think it was Laurence Fishburne, but I'm not 100%, that said the first movie is about birth, the second movie is about life, and the third movie is about death. Do you think that this movie builds on the conclusion of the first one in a satisfying way? Because there are some changes right off the bat. Neo is obviously way more overpowered than he was at the end of the first one, which we saw him take flight. Now he's like Superman, essentially, as Link points out. But Tank is gone. Marcus Chong was obviously, I guess, difficult to work with. So they're just like, oh, he died off screen. Do you think that the movie has any hurdles that it fails to overcome in trying to just get past that for, recreate the world of the first movie, basically?
I think Reloaded is a really great sequel in the sense that it picks up really, really well where the first one left off. Like the first one ends and you're like, okay, Neo is the one. He is like this universe's version of Superman. And right. Now the humans have a shot at beating the machines. So it's like, I think the first one sets up the rest of the trilogy really well. And the second one, I think, really hits the ground running in that sense. You really get to see how powerful Neo is, but you also get to see sort of what his limitations are. You get to see there's still stuff about this world that he hasn't figured out yet. There is now like a ticking clock. The machines are coming to Zion, and if he can't find a way to stop them in time, then basically humanity is going to be enslaved for the rest of time. So it's like, I think any good 3-part story, whether it's Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or Matrix, I think the second chapter is I think a good second chapter is all about really raising the stakes and really saying no, things are not as simple. Things are not as simple as you thought they were. This is going to be really hard, and there's going to be a lot more to overcome if you're going to win in the end, and it's like, in Empire, that is the Empire striking back, and Darth Vader being Luke's father. And in this movie, it's Neo is constantly coming up against this powerlessness that he has or this powerlessness to change the way things are. The movie starts out when you see Trinity dying, and the whole time he's like, I have to be able to change this, right? Like I have to be able to save her. I have to have that choice. And I think what's so good about the second one is it really dives into the nature of choice and how the machines have set it up to where it's kind of impossible to choose anymore because they've outsmarted us as humans. But it makes the movie so much richer and more satisfying, I think.
Yeah, I love that it opens with a dream. The whole one of the major themes of the first movie is, you've been living in a dream world, Neo, and the whole dreams versus reality. So you literally start the movie off thinking you're in the middle of an action sequence, and then you're in a dream. So it's already throwing you off balance right out the gate. And I think it shows that Neo's abilities are already starting to expand. Like now he has visions. And as we learn later on, like his power extends beyond the Matrix even. One of the things that I feel like, well, I already mentioned the thing with Tank that kind of feels a little jarring because it's set a few months after the first movie. Tank was actually a pretty popular character in the first one. Did that register? Were you like, whatever, screw that guy?
I did. It did. Yeah. I mean, it obviously it's like, I don't know what happened I don't know what the situation with the actor was. But it was kind of disappointing because it's like they set up that character to be somebody who is going to show up for the rest of the franchise. And then they kind of replace him with Link in the sequel movies, who kind of is, he fulfills the same function as a character, but it's like, it's one of the few things about these movies that doesn't feel very cohesive. But I mean, it's inevitable. It's like too, I felt that with Gloria Foster, who died, I think, before they were able to shoot her parts for the third one, so they recast her in the third one. It's just stuff like that where it's like, people are people, tragedy happens, relationships fall apart, and then you have to find a way to move on and work with it in a production. And sometimes you can do that really well. And I think these movies actually did a pretty good job in sort of filling those empty cast positions and making it work. And then sometimes you end up with something like Rise of Skywalker, where it's like, it doesn't quite work. It feels a little weird. So
still a little raw.
Yeah. Shit happens, So yeah.
I think the big challenge with this one, well, first of all, before we get to that, I want to say that I always kind of bothers me that the Sentinel thing happens like literally, like they discover the machines digging literally like the 5 minutes into the movie, because to me it feels like it feels like the last movie in the franchise in a way. You know what I mean? Like they're setting up for, like, the ticking clock feels so imminent that it feels like the end, and you're like, but Neo just said it. Like, if you're watching these movies back to back, Neo's like, I'm not here to tell you how it's going to end. I'm here to tell you how it's going to begin. And then the next thing they're like, it's all over. We're screwed, guys. It feels to me like almost, I've had this this fantasy in my head of taking Reloaded and Revolutions and sort of editing a more streamlined cut together. And like, it feels like it would have been together a good third part, and that there's something missing. Like, to me, there always felt like there was a step missing in between the original film and Reloaded. But do you disagree? It seems like it feels like a pretty smooth transition.
It did for me. I mean, like I said, I just watched them all back to back, and honestly, the most jarring transition between the movies, aside from the Tank not being there anymore, is just the jump in quality. Honestly, like, it was like I think the first Matrix, part of what made the first Matrix cool was how practical so much of it was. Mm-hmm. Like, it was like that, like stuff like that helicopter crash and all of those fight scenes, they had a tactile element to them, which made all the fantastical elements in there all the more fantastical. Whereas like these, with the sequels, they obviously had like all the money in the world at their disposal, and it's very, very obvious. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I know people like to dunk on the Matrix sequels because it's like, oh, now Neo's just flying around all the time, and it's like, I mean, it does maybe look a little weird, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, you see him flying around in the very last shot of the first one, so it's not right. It's not that over the top. Yeah. I mean, in regards to the whole planting the threat on Zion, I think my theory is this, and this is just a long shot theory, but I think part of the reason they did these two sequels back to back and kind of treated them as one production and had them flow into each other so well and release them the same year is probably because like, what you don't want to do is you don't want to end up in a situation where you do a second movie and set up a bunch of shit and then not get to make the third movie because that one doesn't do very well. They were kind of like, okay, well, if we're going to make a trilogy, let's make sure we can make the last two movies to the best of our ability. Right. And so it's like, I think that's why they set that up in this movie. That's why it's you're told constantly, oh, the machines are coming, they're digging through, they're going to get to Zion in this long, so that it's like when this movie ends, you're like, wait a minute, the machines are going to get to Zion in this long. Like, oh my gosh. Like I remember even the first time I saw it, I would like, the movie ended and immediately I was like, well, wait, I want to see the next one. I want to know what happens. Like what happened to Zion? Like what happened to everybody, So it's like whereas I think if they had been treated a little bit more like individual productions, they probably would have saved something like that for the last movie. But like I said, I mean, like as someone who just watched them all the way through, I think they flow into each other pretty well. There was no moment in this trilogy where I was like, oh, that felt too forced, or oh, that felt a little like, I mean, maybe like individual performances and individual scenes and moments feel a little forced or not quite well calibrated. But I think as a piece of long form storytelling, actually, I think it's surprisingly cohesive. I think it's a lot more cohesive than something like Marvel. I mean, like those movies are like, they're all great, but my roommates and I did a Marvel rewatch at the beginning of this, at the beginning of the pandemic, and you'd be shocked how not well a lot of those flow into each other. Like, it's like, you can kind of tell that it's like every one of those movies is a new filmmaker picking up the baton and doing their own thing with it. Whereas these are like, I think they're pretty uniform, I think.
I think the only big, maybe I think it's not that it feels forced to me, it's that it feels really abrupt. And I think the part of that is that the Wachowskis had this multimedia plan that included Reloaded and Enter the Matrix, the video game, and the Animatrix. So the Animatrix, I don't know if you've even seen, there's one segment called Final Flight of the Osiris that is actually the ship that discovers that the machines are digging and sends the message to for everyone else to go and retrieve. That's the message that in the video game. In the video game, you play as Niobe and Ghost, who is sort of her second in command on the Logos, and you play as those two characters. And there's actually a mission where you go to retrieve that message, and then the movie starts with them coming back with the message. Like there's a whole other there's a bunch of stuff that happens in the game that hints more at Niobe's feelings for Morpheus. Ghost has sort of an unrequited love for Trinity that's in the game. There's all these character beats and stuff that sets up the freeway chase, that sets up the Oracle and her changed appearance. There's even a detail in there that I'd never noticed before because I watched all the footage for the video game where Sati's parents, Ramachandra and Kamala, I think he says Kamala. I've been trained to say Kamala. because of our vice
Kamala,
president
yeah.
elect. So now it's all confusing. So Sati's parents, they sold the termination code to the for the Oracle old shell to the Merovingian in order to get Sati's freedom. Like there's a whole bunch of things that are in there.
Wow.
That are not in the movies, and I think it loses a little bit of that. I don't know. It loses a little bit of that consistency or coherence in service of telling the story across various media.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I just taking those things as examples, like the whole thing with Ghost having unrequited love for Trinity.
Well,
like,
that's kind of just
I didn't know.
They got to give him something to play. But yes,
yeah, it's kind of whatever. But even
do you even know who
Ghost
is without me like? He's
exactly
barely in the movies. Yeah.
Well, because the important thing, right, is Niobe's relationship with Morpheus. But that does get touched on in the movie. So they tell you kind of from the onset, oh, they had a thing. She doesn't really believe in his stuff. I felt like, at least personally, I felt like that tension was properly set up in the context of the movies. But I think here's the thing, like the purpose of stuff like video games and supplementary materials is to sort of fill out the world. So you shouldn't have to get information that you need to get the story from those things. Not to bring it back to Rise of Skywalker, but like I shouldn't have to play Fortnite to hear the thing that they're actually talking about in the movie.
The dead speak,
but like,
though, Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I don't know based on what you've told me, it sounds like they kind of did the right thing where they were like, you could do what I did and just watch the movies and get like a really complete version of the story and a complete version of the themes. But if you also played the games and you also watch Animatrix and that, you would understand more context. You would understand, there are new characters who get fleshed out and have their own things. Like that's what's cool about having an expanded universe. And I think it's so cool that they got to do that with this property, because that's something that you almost always that you saw with like Star Wars and movies made for children. So it was like cool to have a big R-rated action movie that was like, oh, you like that? There's also a video game. There's also an anime anthology movie. There's also a this. There's also a that. I think it's cool. And I mean, again, I haven't seen those things, so I can't really speak to this, but it seems like they did a pretty good job of balancing that with what you get already just watching the movies.
Right. Yeah, I promise I do like these movies. It sounds like I don't so far because I'm getting all my grievances out of the way now. But it's just also, this movie it feels very top heavy. You know what I mean? Like it has to set up the big,
it is pretty top
the big
heavy,
finale. Yeah. It has to introduce you to everyone outside, because the first movie is very isolated. It's like a bottle episode of this universe. It's all on that one ship with this one crew. There's like 6 characters basically, and that's it. And here you have to meet literally everyone in Zion. You have to understand the military, the political structure. Like they have to bring Smith back, set up what he's up to, explain how everything fits together, and that's before you get to the architect. And he just like flips the whole table over, and you have to start over again.
Blows the whole premise up, basically. Yeah.
Right. Oh, and I love that scene, which we'll get to. Which initially, when the first time you watch, you're like, "Wait, what? What's happening?" That's why they make fun of it in Scary Movie 3 with George Carlin. They did a whole MTV Movie Awards thing with Will Ferrell as architect.
Oh man, I have to watch that. That's funny.
It's really funny. So it's just, it feels like here they have so many boxes they need to check, and it takes like, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes for them to be like, all right, everybody good? Cool, we're going now. And I think it really kicks into gear when he meets with the Oracle. So, but before we get to that, you have to get the agents and all. So okay, we're going all over the place. So I do really love that so much of the emotional hook of this movie rests on Neo and Trinity's romance. I mean, as it sort of did in the first one as well. I think the fact that, and I mentioned this with Freddie when we talked about the first movie, the fact that Keanu Reeves is a man but has sort of feminine features, and Carrie-Anne Moss is a woman but has like a little bit harder edged features. I think they play off really well a lot of the themes on identity and gender, and they have sort of this. These both have this sort of androgynous elements to them that I know is something that the Wachowskis explore in greater detail in something like Sense8. So I love that aspect of their relationship, and Reeves and Moss have such chemistry, which is why I'm so happy somehow they're both coming back for the fourth one. What are your thoughts on the Neo Trinity romance and how it plays into? I mean, it's kind of the key to everything here, literally.
It is kind of the key to everything, and I think they're both like excellent actors. I mean, I think Carrie-Anne Moss is like a genius actress. I haven't seen her in anything. I think she should have gotten an Emmy for Jessica Jones personally, but like she's incredible. Keanu Reeves is just such a lovable presence. But I think you touched on like a really good point. I think what makes that romance so different and revolutionary from other Hollywood romances is how non-gendered it feels. Like it's like she is a damsel in distress technically in this movie, but it never feels like that. Like it never feels like, oh, he's coming to save his woman. It's like, it's not like that. They're two incredibly strong, smart, driven people who have found each other and love each other very much. One of them just also happens to be a God computer program as well. So,
exactly.
But it's like I think they sell it really well. You know, I mean, like I'm jumping forward a bit, but they've got some scenes in Revolutions that I think are just beautiful and really well done. I think they did a great job. I'm very interested to see how they're going to be used in the fourth one. I mean, I'm very curious about a lot of things with that movie, but it's like you have two characters who are, you know, spoiler alert, dead, you know, but also like had kind of their relationship, I think, play out in a really solid, satisfying way. So yeah, very interested to see what I think what that's going to be.
Keanu dropped a tidbit a few weeks ago or whatever that Matrix 4 has a love story, and I'm like, dude, these are all love stories. What are you talking about? Like at their core, these movies really are about Neo's love for Trinity and that relationship. It all hinges on it. She brings him back kind of in the first one. He brings her back here. They sort of both sacrifice themselves at the end of Revolutions. Again, spoilers. The whole architect scene hinges on his love for Trinity over the rest of humanity. He's like, yeah, okay, we'll figure out the rest of humanity. We'll get there.
Exactly.
But I have to save Trinity. Yeah. So everybody else is going to have to fend for themselves in the meantime. So I love that is where, you know, it seems like they're really focusing on that part of the story with the fourth one. And also that rave scene in Zion, the sort of infamous rave scene, which I'm kind of like, with that scene overall. I do love that it is intercut with a legit sex scene with Neo and Trinity, that they're so passionate, and that, again, they sort of blend together in a way that when they're holding, you get that beautiful shot of them sort of holding each other. He gets like a flash of her falling.
Oh, I love that shot.
And they're sort of wrapped around each other, and then you can see all their, this sounds dirtier than it is, their holes, their Matrix jack-in holes, like from being plugged into the pods. I love that because it's so intimate and sweet and genuine, and I think that one moment sells their relationship so much.
Let's talk about that scene for a bit, because that was a
sweaty Zion rave,
and I watched it this last time. Yeah, the sweaty Zion rave / sweaty sex scene. When my roommate and I watched it, like he was like, oh, okay, okay, you know, and it's a weird scene, but I also like I love it in the way that I love all of the Zion stuff in these movies, because it's like, yeah, going back to what you said, like in the first Matrix movie, all you're getting of the real world is just what's happening on that ship, you know? And it's like, you know, it's like, obviously it's post-apocalyptic. Everybody's wearing like really grungy clothes and this and that, but it's like, you know, you get just a small slice of it. And everything in the Matrix has has a feeling of irreality to it. Everything is a little cold and plastic and caustic, and everything's like green tinted. So it's like I think what I like about that scene, at least in theory, I mean, execution is another discussion. But what I love about that moment is it's the first time in the series that you get to see sort of humanity in full force.
Right.
You know, you get to see people dancing and being alive in the way that they're just never in the Matrix, because they're not really. They're hooked into an AI program. So I think it's cool that they put that in there, because it sets the stakes, and it sets the tone for the real world really well, because that's where the majority of the third movie is set. But it also gives you a sense of what is at stake here. You know, it's like what is going to be destroyed if the machines reach Zion. It's like the last sliver of humanity, the last sliver of actual humanity is at stake here. So yeah, and I mean, the Wachowskis love a good rave, like they love a good lot of attractive people half naked and dancing. It's like it's what it is. I don't know. I agree though. Yeah. I think that final shot of that sex scene is so beautiful. Just really, really amazing composition and haunting in the best possible way.
Yeah. I think the part of what makes the rave scene stand out so much too is it immediately follows sort of an assembly of all the citizens of Zion, and then Counselor Hammond, who I actually think is a cool character and has that scene later on with Neo about the man, the machine, mm-hmm. and how they mm-hmm. These machines keep us alive and other machines are coming to kill us. That whole scene, which I actually really enjoy, is that it goes from him introducing Morpheus giving his like inspirational speech, and he's like, "Tonight, let us have a sweaty rave," and it just cuts immediately to that. I think it's it's this like there's like no transition. It just kind of goes for it, and more power to the Wachowskis if that was their vision. It's just like, wait, what's happening? It just kind of throws you off a little bit.
It does. Another thing I love about that whole moment, that whole sequence too, is it's like up till that point in the movie, like Morpheus is kind of painted as like a pariah politically. Like nobody really wants to listen to him. Everybody's always like, "Oh, we can't." It's like, shut up, Morpheus. Like, you and your religious dogma shit, and it's like the president won't listen to him. The head general is livid at him for going against his orders, and you're like, oh, they're screwed. And then he like goes in front of everyone in Zion, and they all just lose their shit. They love him. Like the people love him. He's a rock star because it's like he gives them hope. He gives them a reason to keep fighting and a reason to keep believing. And I think you see that so concretely in that scene and in that monologue, which Laurence Fishburne just nails nails the hell out of when he just like goes up and gives this big epic speech. It's fantastic.
It's interesting too to see what they end up doing with Morpheus in these two movies, because he could have easily been sort of the Obi-Wan Kenobi figure where he brings Neo into the world and he's like, all right, I'm out, good luck. And they keep him around in the sequels. Meanwhile, Neo is well past kind of needing his mentoring anymore. To back it up a little, we get the sort of crew meeting with Niobe. And then we get our first hint of Smith with the earpiece, and then the agents come in, the upgrades, which I really like. That you get a little bit of a sense of how Neo's skill within the Matrix has changed so much since the last time we saw him. You get that Furious Angels track by Rob Dugan, which, by the way, the music in these movies is amazing. Don Davis did a tremendous score for all three of these, and I think it's important that we give him his props as well.
Yeah. I will say I'm jumping a little ahead here, but since you brought up music, I was
we're all over the place.
So I was acutely disappointed when the third movie didn't end with a Rage Against the Machine song, because the other two do. Like, I'm just like, it's always the perfect send out, just like, yeah, we are raging against the machine. It's really what all these movies are about. And then the third movie just ends with like big orchestral music, and I'm like, oh okay.
Yeah, but that big orchestral music is pretty epic. It's
pretty epic. The score you were,
oh man,
yeah,
it's great.
The scores for these movies are like like honestly every other element to these movies, truly excellent. So
Yeah.
so
I also
no
think it's
complaint
interesting too. And at the beginning of Reloaded, we have I think Daniel Bernhardt as Agent Johnson, who's also coming back for 4, apparently, which should be interesting.
Yes,
How that works. I guess he's going to be sort of the whatever the lead agent is in the next version, the new version of the Matrix. I have no idea what the hell's going to happen with that, but I think he's good in this movie as sort of the Smith replacement, and he also has a fight scene with Keanu in, I believe, the first John Wick movie too. So they're tight in real life.
Oh wait, which fight scene was that?
I think it's one of the ones almost at the very end. It's like the before he gets to. I have to rewatch that movie. It's been a while. It's one of the last couple fight scenes.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I just Googled Daniel Bernhardt John Wick. Yeah, that was another trilogy that my roommates and I actually watched recently, which was also pretty cool. But another Keanu Reeves discussion for a different time.
Yeah, no, well, yeah. Yesterday I was finishing up some work and watching Bill and Ted Face the Music on my phone, and then watched Revolutions, and cool. I was like, it's too late. Otherwise, I would totally watch Parabellum right now. Just making like a Keanu like third chapter like evening, but didn't get to it, unfortunately.
A threeathon.
Yeah, exactly. Keanu threeathon. So we do see Zion in here. It's at the center of the earth, obviously, all of that. What are your thoughts on how well the movie establishes not only the design of Zion, but also, I mean, I feel like within the span of 10 minutes, we meet the kid, we meet Mifune, obviously Niobe and Locke and Ghost and the multiple captains, Cass and Z. And there's this is part of where I feel like the movie's just like, all right, playing catch up. Here's your supporting cast and let's go.
I kind of, here's the thing. I kind of liken it to the middle section of the first movie. I think and I'm using, you can't see, but I'm using air quotes thing, but the problem with the Matrix movies is that the world is so complex and there is so much going on, and there's so much that you as the audience need to understand to get a good sense of the action and a good sense of the stakes, that inevitably large swaths of all 3 of these movies are devoted to just setup. I mean, like I think the first one is able to do it the most successfully because Neo is such a great POV character. Like Neo is learning about the world sort of in tandem with us, which is not necessarily the case in the other 2 movies. But they're kind of doing the same thing. Like I think both like the first hour of Reloaded and the first hour of Revolutions really are just setup. It's, hey, here are the players, here's where everybody is on the map. And then the second half of the movie is, now we can just move. Now we can just hit the ground running and just move. And I think it works. I mean, I think it's obviously I think that was probably a lot of the reason these movies were not as well received when they came out. I think a lot of people came in expecting it just to be straight action, but that's not really what the movies are. I mean, that's not even really what Matrix was, as just phenomenal as all the action is, and I want to get to that later, but like this is an epic fantasy story. It's like Lord of the Rings or I just finished reading Dune for the first time, and actually the Matrix reminded me a lot of that, just in terms of like the scope of the world and the complexity of the themes and how they're all interacting with each other. So there's like a lot of time that's spent with the characters and with the world, just establishing things and who they are and setting them up. And I think the movies need it, because it's like when you then do kick things into high gear, it's all the more crazy. It's all the more impactful. But yeah, I can see how it would be trying to some audience's attention.
And it's not even the exposition. Like these movies have so much thematically and so much like philosophically that they're trying to get out there, that I feel like the sequels sort of struggle with combining them as cohesively as the first one does, where in Reloaded, I enjoy most of the chatty scenes, but there's like an action scene, then the Merovingian talking about causality for 5 minutes. then a fight scene, then I'm trying to think. Then Counselor Hammond being like, "Oh, what is control?" Then then like a car chase, and then the architect being like, illusions of what all that stuff. And I think most of
actually going on here,
right. And I think that a lot of those conversations are interesting, but it almost feels like the movie sometimes comes to a standstill so they can have a little mini like philosophy lecture and then be like, oh yeah, and back to the story. And in the best way, in the best instances, it blends seamlessly. But often, and I feel like the Merovingian's the one that feels the most outside of itself.
I see it this way. I see it this way because I think this movie in particular does spend a lot of its time not just on exposition but on these sort of like questions about the nature of reality and choice and our relationship with technology. But it's like at the end of the day, I think the struggle in Reloaded is a very internal struggle with Neo. It's like, whereas the first one, he was like, oh, am I the one? Am I going to be the savior of the universe? This and that. Like in this movie, he's really grappling with the nature of reality and the nature of choice, and do I actually have the ability to alter my future? So it's like, yeah, you've got the scenes, so it's like all of these scenes are all of these different little I see them all as these little different voices in his head saying like, like that, like the Merovingian on one hand is like, there's no such thing as choice. Everything happens because something else happened. It's determinism. I learned that from Devs, which is an incredible miniseries that I recommend everybody should watch on Hulu. Because it's all about that too. It's all about free will and choice, and do we actually even have free will? Because is every decision we make the result of a bunch of other things that are out of our control? But at the end of the day, I love that the movie lands on the other side of that question by saying, no, free will is all you have. At the end of the day, your choices are all you have, and you always have the ability to make a choice. But that's sort of the realization that Neo comes to by the end of the movie. So it's like the whole movie, he's hearing all of these different people and all of these, like the entire world is basically like screaming at him like, give up.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice. What will happen. That is just the nature of things. The machines are the machine is in control, but even with all of that, he still is defiant. He still makes his own decisions and chooses. It goes with his gut and goes with his heart. And I think this movie, honestly, maybe even a little bit more than the first one, for me personally, is just a beautiful embodiment of that theme of free will and that theme of like, like Terminator, there's no fate but what you make. Like you have agency over your choices, and that's what makes us human,
Yeah.
So I love the metaphysical discussions. I think they might slow the movie down, but they're so cool and so rich.
Yeah, I agree. I think I have come to love them as well. I think at first I was like, wait, what's happening now? Especially again,
I was off
restaurant
put to it
scene. Especially when the restaurant scene with the Merovingian, where you're like, wait, why is he? Okay. That's what the Merovingians.
High school me checked out. High school me checked out at that scene. I was like, what is this? But now that I'm an adult, I watch that scene and I'm like, wow, what an interesting character. What an interesting discussion about free will, and what a strange way to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. But and so I like that. I like all that too. I'm just addressing one of the big criticisms for this movie, which is probably a big reason why Revolution's box office gross was so low. I think people saw this and they were like, yeah, okay, I don't know if they know what they're doing with this thing. So Revolution's actually made less than the first movie did. It was just kind of petered off at the end, which is why it took almost 20 years for them to be like, you know what? Yeah, let's try and resurrect that. And bring more to that.
This is kind of off topic, but I actually I have a theory on why that is, and I don't actually think it has anything to do with the quality of the movie. I think releasing 2 movies in the same franchise in 1 year was a bad call. I think they should have released the 3rd movie at whatever the same time they released the 2nd movie the next year. I think the 2nd movie came out during the summer of that year, like of 2003, and made. Yeah, and it made more money than God. It was a hit. But then it was like the second one came out, I think at awards season or Christmas, and it was like, this is like a lot of the reason I think Solo bombed too at the box office. It's like people are used to seeing specific kind of movies at specific times where they have less competition, and you were releasing a Matrix movie at a point where it was weird to release it, and you were releasing it in the same year, so it was like people didn't have time to decompress and sit with it. It was like there was no time for the hype to build. Like, it's like, honestly, I think if Endgame would have gotten released like 6 months after Infinity War, I mean, it still probably would have made like
not nearly what it did,
amount of money, because that's a different, but probably not what it did. Yeah, it's like I think the how much money a movie makes is a product of a lot of different things, and yeah, I'm sure fan disappointment probably did factor into it, but I think more than that was just like, I think that was a poor release plan. If I were a studio head at Warner Brothers at the time, I would have been like, no, we're doing them a year apart. Like, just deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, I think the Reloaded hit like, DVD or whatever not that long before Revolutions came out. So if people missed it in the theater, they probably were like, what? The new one's coming out. I didn't even see the last one. I forget it. I'll catch them both when it's all over. I think that, that's a good point.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
anyway, sorry, that was a side tangent.
No. It's all whatever. It's relevant. So I do, before we get into sort of more where we are in the middle of the movie, I think we're kind of getting around to the Oracle scene. I really wanted to point out that moment of how Neo's journey changes. As you said, that's sort of where he ends up, is the nature of reality and what choice does he really have and all of that. But it starts out with the pressure of being the savior, being like, these movies are not shy about their religious allegories and symbolism.
Yeah.
So he's, he goes through, on the elevator, and they get off at their level, and all these like people start coming up to him with gifts and watch over my son on this ship, and watch over, like, all the pressure of everyone feeling, of him being the chosen one and feeling like he needs to protect all of these people. And they all need him. And so you get that really, again, another sweet Trinity Neo moment where she's like, she walks off. She's like, I'll see you after we have time. She's like, they need you. And he's like, I need you, to Trinity, which I just love. Yeah. I love that moment. And I think that really underscores the whole theme of what the one was supposed to do. The one was supposed to be like, oh my God, I have to take care of everyone. And Neil's just like, yeah, I know them, but I only have so much time with my lady before we have to get back on the ship. And I think that encapsulates so much of what happens at the end of the film.
Yeah. Well, it's cool because I think like what makes Neo special isn't that he is the one. And at the end of the day, the one, as we find out at the end of the movie, is just another computer program used to control a flaw within another construct. What makes Neo special isn't the fact that that's him. What makes him special is that he's got an amazing heart, and he doesn't give up, and he believes in choice. It's like, and I think that's what's cool about these movies is they incorporate that element of like prophecy and religion and stuff. But at the end of the day, I think why I love Neo as a character is he succeeds not because he's Superman God person, but because because he cares more than anybody else. The fact that he is constantly choosing his relationship with Trinity over like the greater good and your responsibilities as this person, I think is proof of that. I think it's like, if it weren't for that, I don't think he would have succeeded, So yeah, it's cool how the movie's constantly planning that and setting that up.
Yeah. His superpower is compassion and everything. Yeah, I love that. Mm-hmm. I think so. So then they're going off to see the Oracle. Meanwhile, Bane is coming. whoa, not that one, not the one from The Dark Knight Rises.
Different movie.
Whoa. Yeah, different Warner Brothers movie. Different Warner. Oh, that was the third one. But Bane comes really more in this third movie as well. So you get the setup to Smith sort of possessing Bane, which again was one of those things where I was like, wait, what the hell? Because the first movie has such clear delineation between this is the real world, this is the Matrix, and this movie is all about breaking that wall and showing that, the computer program, like the brain is like a computer, right? So this movie really leans into that, where Bane's circuitry, his brain is taken over, possessed, for lack of a better term, by Smith. So you get that, oh God, and that Smith will suffice, which we'll get into Hugo Weaving in a second, and how great he is in these movies. So what is going on with Bane? Did you like that sort of element of Smith not only starting to take over the Matrix, the fact that he can replicate now, but also heading into the real world? Or is that sort of, suspending disbelief a little too much?
Oh, I love it because like I in the first movie, you're told that it's like there are humans and then there are machines, and the humans and the machines are at war with each other, and it's like an alien invasion. It's like we have to defeat the machines. And I think what's cool about the sequels is that even though that tension is still there, it is constantly adding layers of complexity onto it and blurring the lines between what human and machine is. And I think Smith is such a great example of that. Because he is, it's like the Oracle says in the third movie, he is Neo, basically. He's just the opposite of Neo. So it's like he's got the same power to sort of break the barrier between these two worlds, except instead of breaking that barrier and using it to save the world, he's breaking that barrier and just using it to consume everything and just make everything himself. And I think, I think him possessing someone is a fun idea. Doesn't really get explored in the second movie, but it results in some real crazy shit in the third movie, which I really liked. So, like I don't know who the actor was who played Bane, but his Hugo Weaving impression was so spot on to the point where he that scene in, I'm jumping ahead to Revolutions, but that scene where he's like holding Trinity at knife point and talking to Neo, I'm like, that's Hugo Weaving, right? Like that's him. He's there. And it's like, no, it's a different actor giving a Hugo Weaving performance, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, Ian Bliss is the actor's name, and he's so great.
Bliss.
In that it makes, as you were saying, and when we get to Revolutions, it makes it feel like Hugo Weaving is in that movie a lot more than he is. He has like a couple scenes in the Matrix early on, with the Oracle and all that. And then the battle at the end, Hugo Weaving doesn't have that much screen time in Revolutions, but it feels like he's throughout the whole, like a constant, Bane even says, there's nowhere you can go. There's no, I won't find you, that whole thing, which is great and makes him probably one of my favorite movie villains of all time, just because he's so much fun in these sequels. So we're about to get to the air quotes Burly brawl. So we meet Seraph, which is like an angelic reference, obviously. So he's the Oracle's protector. So again, they're expanding the universe in different ways. He's even referred to as wingless in Revolutions. I don't know if you ever caught that. The like bouncers at Club Hell.
Oh, that's fascinating.
They're like, oh, Joe, what the hell? It's wingless, they say. So this movie really introduces the idea of angels, and this is the scene with the Oracle, angels and aliens and ghosts and werewolves, vampires. An explanation for all the supernatural stuff, how it could actually exist in the Matrix. And how freaking cool is it that the Wachowskis were like, you know what? Let's just bring ghosts into it. Fuck it.
I love it. I again, it's like what makes these movies so awesome is that, it's not just a dystopian sci-fi action movie. It's also a kung fu movie, but it's also like a cyberpunk movie, and it's also all these things. And oh, hey, yeah, there's vampires. But they find a way to make it work in this movie so well. And those two characters, oh my God, what are their names? The ones who can like disappear through
the twins.
Things. The
That's all they're
twins.
called in the movie, yeah.
So just like some of the most ingenious action in a sci-fi movie ever, like the amount of mileage that the Wachowskis are able to get out of that concept of them just being able to move through walls like ghosts and shit is so awesome. I think one of my favorite little beats from Reloaded is when one of them tries to like cut Trinity's head off through the car, but she like speeds up just enough to where like he misses her when he like phases through. It's like it's just this like, oh my god, it's so cool, and it works because it's like, yeah, the Matrix is a playground for the machines to do whatever they need to do to keep humanity sedated, basically. So it's like I love in the sequels how it really blows the doors open on what a computer program in that world is capable of and what they can do and what that all looks like. It's just so inventive and cool. It gives them an excuse to do some of, honestly, in my opinion, like the best action in a movie ever. I think Reloaded has like more great action scenes than any other movie. I mean, it's just like almost every single action scene in that movie is like a 10 out of 10 classic. And it's like usually a movie will have one of those action scenes or none of them, and this movie's got like him battling all the Agent Smiths, the car chase scene, like all of this. Just oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah, it's an idea as far as the supernatural stuff that I can't imagine them not going back to and expanding and building upon with the next one. Like if that's where the second movie goes, it's like all bets are off. The Matrix is going to be like a freaking hellscape in the fourth one. I have no idea what's going to happen. And I kind of love that we haven't learned anything about it so far. And I think they're either done shooting or almost done shooting. And I feel like there's been basically nothing revealed except for like, it's going to be cool. Stuff's going to happen. I'm like, okay, cool. There's a lot of new cast members, so I have no idea where they're going to take it, but where I guess where Lana's going to take it, because Lily is not coming back to do the fourth one. But.
Yeah. I want to not, I don't need to see a trailer. I don't need to read a synopsis. Right. I'm going to be there opening night. Like, I don't get, like, this might be one of those. I get to see another movie set in this universe. I'm so excited. Yeah. I don't know if I'll do like a blackout, but like, I don't want to know. I want to sit in the theater and be as surprised as possible. And I bet they're going to try and do that as much as possible. So
yeah, for sure. We'll I do also love, now we're finally getting to the Oracle stuff. I do love that the real challenge, I feel like, of a sequel is taking what was left unsaid or what we assumed for the first one and taking it in another direction. The example I always like to go to for this is like Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, where we all assumed what Jack Sparrow's compass was going to do, that it just pointed to Tortuga, but then the whole plot point for the second movie is, no, it points to what you want the most. And that's why everybody wants it for different reasons and all this stuff. And I love that. Yeah. And in this movie, we have a similar sort of subversion where, the Oracle is introduced to us as a psychic, and like, she's a fortune teller. They all refer, the Merovingian even refers to her as a fortune teller. But really, she's just a program from the machine world who's very intuitive, who's like studies the human race and is able to sort of anticipate what their choices are. Going back to the theme of choice, I love that. That's her sort of long game in trying to achieve, trying to achieve peace. She says in here, the only way we're going to get there is together, is to get to that peace, the humans and the machines, and try and bring everything to a standstill and sort of improve the situation in some way and kind of break the cycle. So what are your thoughts on Gloria Foster's, unfortunately brief role in the sequels here, and how she's basically shows up here to give Neo his quest and sort of this is where, after finally we're introduced to everybody, this is where the movie really kind of starts. What are your thoughts on the Oracle's role here?
I just have to say, like, both movies Acutely this one, I think, because you know, she does kind of show up and say like, well, this is not going to be easy. This is, you know, this is a lot more complicated and complex, and you know, you get a much better sense of her as a character now that you understand that she is a program. I was like, she should have gotten nominated for an Oscar for like one of them. It's such a beautifully understated performance, and it's cool because it's like, I love the idea that you take a computer program and you basically give it all knowledge about humanity. Like you give it, you basically say like, this is everything that has happened in human history. This is who humans are. This is how they work. You've gotten to observe them and see sort of how they act, and then as a result, you know, see how they're going to behave in the future. And that once you've given a computer program that power, it just becomes this pure good, this like just absolute light, this wonderful, wonderful person who is just there, who just like persists in being there for no other reason than to just like make sure the human race survives. It's one of the, I think one of the most casually optimistic elements of these movies is that character, because it's like, you know, they could have just had her be like, they could have kept her as like a human who's just like really smart and has fortune telling abilities. But it's like, I think the fact that she's part of the machine world and a program makes the fact that she is fighting so hard for humanity's survival like all the more meaningful. I think it goes to show that it is like, you know, there is hope for humanity, and that at the end of the day, people can be good deep down, and that they are worth fighting for, even in the eyes of a machine, you know?
Yeah, and I also feel like the fact that this movie at the end reveals that the architect is you know, likens himself to being the father of the Matrix, and if he's the father, then the Oracle's the mother. So you sort of get between that reveal and also the scene on the bench at the very, very end of Revolutions with the two of them, you sort of get the deal, the sense that he is like the satanic figure. She's like the, you know, the godlike figure. And it's like them playing, you know, toying with humanity and trying to tip the balance one way. Like she says, he's trying to balance the equation, and her job is to unbalance it. And so I love that there's like this cosmic, this cosmic scale where these two machines are being like, yeah, we should tear it all down. And she's like, no, there's something there to save. Let's keep them around.
Yeah.
And I love that element of it. There's something about two characters being interconnected in such an oppositional way that I find so satisfying, both with the architect and the Oracle, but then also, of course, with Neo and Smith. It's like a Harry and Voldemort situation, or at the very end of Revolutions, I was getting Superman and Zod sort of vibes as well.
Yeah. It's the idea of duality, and that it's, love that. You can't have just evil and you can't have just good. It's like they are two parts of the same whole. They have to coexist with each other, but there is a balance. There is a tipping point, and when you enter the story of the Matrix, I think it's very obvious that tipping point has fallen very much in the side of evil, and that it's people like Neo and Morpheus and the Oracle's job to sort of tip that back over into good. But it's like, at the end of the day, you're still going to have that darkness. Like, I think, you know, again, I'm jumping a little ahead, but I think what I like about where the series ends up is that it's like, Neo doesn't destroy the Matrix. He doesn't defeat the machines. He doesn't like burn the whole system down, but he tips the balance. He tips the balance back in favor of good. And I think it's a much more realistic and also a much more beautiful way of looking at that constant struggle between light and darkness that just exists in everything, you know?
Yeah, no, the fight goes on. That's kind of the nature of it. And and I love the fact that that Neo and Smith sort of embody those two sides. So the Oracle, again, being so intuitive, she's like, good luck, Neo. And as soon as the door closes, my boy shows up with the birds flying and all of that. Like, okay, Hugo Weaving in this movie, in all three of these movies, really. But in this movie, the whole, you know, he has that whole spiel about I killed you, Mr. Anderson. I watched you die. That whole thing about like, I'm no longer an agent of this system. I love that so much. Every time he monologues, I know I said earlier about like, oh, there's such chatty parts of this movie. Whenever Hugo Weaving does it, I'm like, shh, everybody quiet. He's talking about purpose or it's so great.
I don't know what direction the Wachowskis gave him as an actor. Like, I don't know what I would be very curious to know as a director what that was, like what they said to him, because like, how do I play this character? How do I play a megalomaniacal rogue computer program that's become a virus? How do I play that? And it's like, he just like it's amazing because the phrase that kept going up in my head as I was rewatching these movies was chewing the scenery. Like he chews every single word and every single scene. He just has to like, he consumes it in a way like in a way that I think fits that character, because the whole point of that character is that like now that he has agency and choice, he just needs to make the entire world in his image. He just needs to make everything and everyone him, because he thinks he's God. He thinks he's perfect. So it's like, it's so fitting then that you've got this performance where it's just like every word that comes out of his mouth is just so full and pointed and like he's giving some epic sermon, but he's like, he does it in such a way where it always comes off as hysterical. Like it's, and I think that's what makes him a great bad guy. He's like that perfect amount of just like, oh, this guy's deranged. This guy's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like, also like, oh shit, he's scary. He's like, he's creepy,
Yeah. I feel like he's playing the same character, but he's really not playing the same character, because in the first one, Smith was so conflicted, so burdened. He's like, I have to get out of here. I have to get free. I have to find Zion. He's like desperate to get out of the Matrix. But then we get a sense of what the program's version of an afterlife is. And you can either be deleted, i.e., cross over, or stay behind and kind of wander in the Matrix in limbo. And he is evolved into a virus. Yeah. So he's the one character that is not only allowed to be one-dimensional, it is actually an asset, because what do viruses do? says it, he himself says it in the first movie. Virus spreads to another area. That's all he does. He just, consumes. So of course he's going to be single-minded in that. That's his purpose. And so I love that he's the one character in these movies that has clarity. In the sequels, he's just like, no, this is what I do. I just take over as much as possible until there's nothing left.
Yeah, that scene where he them fight Neo in the courtyard is just one of the craziest things I've seen in a movie ever. It's just because it's so great too, because it's like every time you think like, oh, this couldn't possibly get there, that's it, right? There's no more of him. There's no more Agent Smiths. It's like more of them come in to the point where it's just like a literal flood of bodies, and it's just the same person over and over again. But like the fact, and just getting to see how Neo fights them off, like when he like rips the fucking bowl out of the ground and everything. It's just like, it's like such a brilliant, inventive piece of filmmaking, and just some of the craziest action ever. And it gives you such a great sense of who that character is going to be going forward. It's like he is exactly, you're right. He is exactly what he described humanity as in the first movie. He's like, you guys are like a virus. You just go to a place and you consume it. And it's like, it's projection. It's like he was literally like, that's what I want, and that's what I want to do. But he's projecting that onto humanity, and you get to see just what that actually looks like in this movie. And it's bananas. It's absolutely bananas.
I do love the music as well. Again, here for I guess they call it the Burly brawl scene with all the Smiths and Neo, and that it was the kind of thing that like when my brother and I, when he was back in the day, we'd get like our like toy lightsabers or whatever, and we'd like fight like to this song, that kind of thing. It was like kind of like a roughhousing jam for us back in the day. I do think the visuals haven't aged as well as I would like. I feel like some of the CG doubles look pretty dated, but at the time looked super, looked much more impressive. What are your thoughts on how the visuals, like the CG doubles, the head replacement, and how that all works in this scene? Because that aside, I do think it's a lot of fun. The sound work, there's like the sound of bowling pins falling over at one point when he throws them into each other. And,
yes.
one goes flying at the wall. It's like, but about the visuals, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's cool about the Matrix movies and what's helped them age, I think, better than other movies from that time is that it's like every time you've got a visual effect that doesn't really work, you're in a computer program. Like you're in a giant computer program. So it's like is some of the motion capture in that sequence a little rudimentary? Yeah, it is. Does it still work? I think absolutely. I think if anything, it adds to the ridiculousness of that whole moment. It adds to sort of how over the top and goofy Smith is as a concept, while also giving you a sense of just how threatening he can be when there are just like so many of him. So it's I think it works largely, but would that scene have looked a little bit better in the year of our Lord 2020? Probably. Yeah, they probably would have managed to make it look a little bit more realistic, and probably would have gone for that over the cartoonishness.
That's a good point too about them being actually in the Matrix, and I wonder if that emboldened the Wachowskis to push things a little further, because it was a scene set in the Matrix and things are allowed to look slightly less realistic. Because I can't really even think of, in the real world, I feel most of the visual effects have aged pretty well, and I feel like there's much more of a reliance on practical effects and all the real world set action sequences. The closest, the biggest CG thing they have is obviously the Sentinels, but even that, I feel like that works pretty well in all three movies.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, then they head off to see the Merovingian. There's a lot of Locke Niobe, drama where she volunteers to go and get the Nebuchadnezzar and all that good stuff. So we sort of already covered the scene in the restaurant with the Merovingian and the very special cake that he sends to the lady at the other table. Thoughts on, what is there anything about the scene that we haven't touched on before we move to the chateau battle?
The scene speaks. The scene speaks for itself. It's definitely some of the most interesting use of the Matrix effects, when they like go into like the Matrix and you can see the code, everything is coded, everything. I think this scene definitely gets the award for the most interesting use of that effect so far. This is I definitely will say Reloaded is the horniest Matrix movie. Like, it's
for sure.
I think more so than the other two is the most where they were like, yeah, we're rated R. We could do whatever the hell we want. But I love the Merovingian as a character. I don't know, because it's like, again, it's that whole idea of like, if you have a computer program that has developed supreme intelligence and then you just basically let it off the hook and say you can do whatever you want, sort of who does that computer program end up being? And I love the idea of the Merovingian as a character, because it's like, of course you're going to have a computer program who's like, oh sweet, I have access to everything. Great. I'm going to be like the worst possible rich dude on the planet who can just like do whatever the hell he wants and has like a smoking hot wife who I cheat on with everybody and just like a just gorgeous mansion in the middle of the Himalayas or something. Like he's so over the top, but it's yet again, this is a world in which AI exists. And I think this is like the Oracle or like Agent Smith. I think this is another really excellent use of like, okay, well, if you had AI in sort of like a big real world simulation, how would they behave? Of course you would have ones that are just like, oh, I could do whatever I want. Cool. I'm going to do whatever I want. I'm going to indulge in all of humanity's biggest impulses. Like, he speaks French because he's just like, I don't know, I like the way it sounds in my mouth. Like, I just love the way.
Like wiping your ass with silk. Yeah.
It's like, I'm trying to remember what he said. Yeah. Or what he's like, he just like lists off all of the French curse words in order. He's like, it's beautiful. Oh my God. Yeah, no.
It also sets
he's
up
coming back for the fourth one too.
Yes, he is. Hell yeah, he is. It also sets
Sorry, what
up
does he set up?
The thing with the architect. He sets up because he's talking about, you know why you think you know why you're here, but do you really, sort of, because he knows the journey of the one is a charade. He says in the next right before the chateau battle, he's like, your predecessors had much more respect and all of that. So he's been around. He's one of the oldest programs, they say in the movie. So he's kind of tipping the hat a little bit to them, being like, you don't even know what game we're really even playing. So there's no way you're going to win. And I love that dynamic of having that sort of, he's the closest thing these movies have to kind of a mob boss. And I think he brings such a different energy to it.
He's kind of the Jabba the Hutt in these movies, in the sense that I think like the first act of Revelations is he's like, he is very much about him in the way that the first act of Return of the Jedi is very much about Jabba the Hutt. Like I feel like in all of these big epic stories, you need sort of like an underground world. You need sort of like a seedy underbelly of whatever the society is, and I love this series version of that seedy underbelly of society. I think it's really cool.
And then after they leave the restaurant, we meet the keymaker. Randall Duck Kim, who is also in John Wick Chapter 3. There's a lot of Keanu crossover in these movies.
Yeah.
We get the chateau battle and then the freeway, chase. Yes. Two of the best action sequences in these movies for sure. And in contention for the best ever, possibly. Especially I feel like the freeway chase is the magnum opus of this possibly this trilogy as far as like big ambitious action set pieces go.
I like the freeway chase is like a masterclass in action filmmaking. I mean, just like just in terms of like the complexity of it too, like the amount of different threads that you have to follow as a viewer over the course of that sequence to understand the geography and the stakes and, like what the action is immense. And it's the filmmaking is just invisible. Like you don't even really have a sense of how big and sprawling and complex it is, because you're just the Wachowskis do such an excellent job of just like laser focusing in on everything that you need to know in whatever moment, while also giving you what you need to know going into whatever the next scene is. It's like it reminded, honestly, like the only other car chase action scenes I can even begin to draw comparisons to are the ones in Mad Max Fury Road, honestly. Like I think that's the only one, that's the only other movie I've seen where anybody attempted to pull off something this ambitious and succeeded. But yeah, no, I think the freeway chase I think it's the crown jewel of this franchise. And even if the rest of Reloaded was shit, which it isn't in my opinion, I think it's a great movie, but even if it was shit, it would still get like an 8 out of 10 from me, because that sequence is just oh, wow. When Morpheus is like, he's like doing the handstand on the edge of the truck. It's, oh my God. I'm going to cry. It's so good.
No, and it's, it speaks to the fact that, and I think a lot of it is because of that scene, the music. I listen to the soundtracks to these movies a lot. That Mona Lisa Overdrive is the name of that track. It's weird how this movie for me really, Act 2 is when Reloaded is like kind of at its best. And I think so much of it is because of the chateau battle, that it directly precedes this, and then the freeway thing, because there's just so much going on. There's cars, there's motorcycles, there's ghosts, there's police officers who are then taken over by agents. There's so many different elements at play, and the movie takes its time to let that all play out. I feel like that's like a 12-minute sequence or something like that. It goes on for a while. They took them weeks just to shoot that sequence. And I think you can tell
months,
that they put that much. Yeah. I think they believe they built part of a freeway to shoot that whole thing. And it is, you can feel every little bit of that care in that sequence, and just how, I don't know. It's so great. There's so much going on, swords, guns, all kinds of shit. It's such an achievement for them. And visually it still holds up pretty well, I'd say. I think because of a lot of the practical effects, I think that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah. Well, I think practical effects are a lot of it, but I think a lot of it is filmmaking. I mean, great filmmaking is great filmmaking is great filmmaking, no matter when in history it came out. And there's a universality to the Wachowskis' filmmaking, which makes it so broadly accessible. I think what the miracle of that sequence is just the amount of clarity that you get from it. Like different individual parts like may have aged better than others. I think overall though, the abundance of practical effects in that sequence make it age perhaps a little bit better than other sequences, but it's great because every time they cut to something, it's the right thing to cut to. And it's the sequence itself is so well constructed and so well put together that it's watching it play out is like honestly, like when I watched it with my roommate, I think we paused it after the sequence just to settle down, because we were just so on the edge of our seats. We were just so enraptured by it. And it's great filmmaking. It is just honest to God great filmmaking. And it's frustrating because it's frustrating whenever I see action movies nowadays that either just rely on making everything look practical or just doing the best CG possible, when I'm like, no. Good action is about shot composition. It's about editing choices. It's about geography. It's about all of these different things that the Wachowskis take into account with with all of their action scenes. Except maybe a few in Jupiter Ascending, but that's another discussion. They and that's what makes it so timeless. Like, people are going to be able to watch Matrix Reloaded 25 years from now, and they're going to be just as blown away by it as the people who watched it back in 2003. And that's great filmmaking.
I feel like also not only that, there's callbacks in these two sort of back-to-back action sequences. There's a line that Morpheus tells Neo in the first one where he's like, everyone who's gone up against an agent has died. So when we see Morpheus go up against an agent in this movie, we're like, oh shit, there goes Morpheus. He does the same kind of leap on top of the truck as he does in that dojo scene with Neo. In the first one. There's little things like that build upon each other. Plus the fight choreography. We got to mention Yen Wu Ping, who did the choreography for all three of these movies, and how just again, like you were saying, there's never a moment in any of their action scenes where you don't understand what's going on or who's doing what or where, Neo's over here in the chateau fighting this other guy who's on the other side getting this axe off the wall. And meanwhile, Neo's got the size and then onto the freeway, Trinity and the Keymaker on the motorcycle over here. And Morpheus is on the, you never feel like it's just, what is that Taken 3 where there's that action scene. It's 45 cuts for Liam Neeson to jump over a fence. It's none of that crap. It's they completely know how to orient the audience so that we're in there and with the characters the whole time and not kind of left behind in the dust. Then you have the last minute save by Neo and that sort of very visceral reaction that Link has. The audience surrogate, which is basically what my audience did when I saw it in theaters.
Dude, I know the visual effects of this movie are spotty, but that when the trucks collide with each other and you see the metal rippling through forward, it's just oh wow, it's just oh man, I love these movies so much. Thank you for letting me come on and talk about them.
Oh, of course,
so good,
of course. No, there's a lot to get into, which is why it's taking us so long to get through Reloaded. But yes, there's a lot to cover. So I'm glad that we're actually getting to this. It took a while to finally get to this episode. But the Freeway, amazing. It's the kind of thing that now that I've rewatched it for the first time in a while, I might just go back and just rewatch that sequence just to be like, that's the good shit right there. So then we get the plan. The plan, 3 ships, 3 objectives. Sounds like Providence, that whole thing with the power station or whatever, which again is more of that is in Enter the Matrix. That's part of your missions is as Niobe and Ghost to go and kind of do their side of things.
Fascinating.
So let's see.
I have to play this video game.
Yeah, right. You need to find it, track it down.
If I still can, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I like that the keymaker just knows things because he must know. And I'm like, yeah, because it's happened 5 times before. Nobody questions that how these people know things. It's just like, I know, just trust me. I know. And I'm like, sure. Okay, cool. Even though us watching it, we're like, oh, so that's like, I have a role to play. It's, it's just like they're all the programs are just sort of going through the motions. Like, this is what I do. This is my, my thing. I'm ready to I'm trying to think of a good comparison to this. Like, this is it's just a performance they do just every 100 years or so. It's just the programs all run through, and this is the keymaker. This is your role. You make sure you get the one to the store, and we'll take it from there. And I love that we get.
I like though that. Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I like that you don't quite know that yet. Like, it's like, like he's like the keymaker is like, this is my purpose. It's my job to know everything. And it's like, again, like at that point in the movie, you're thinking like, oh yeah, because like fate and destiny, this and that.
Right.
And then it's like you get to the room with the architect, and you're like, oh, that's no such thing.
Right. We get Morpheus doing the voiceover again, which I just want him to just tell me what to do all the time. We get like another reference back to the first movie with that armchair and the sunglasses. Did you notice Lee Winnell is in this movie in a like super small role for like, I think 10 seconds of screen time?
What?
Lee Winnell. Look
no,
it up.
I didn't. Wait, who does he play?
He's one of the guys on the ship that gets killed on Soren's ship. The one dude like falls and then the other.
Oh yeah, where the thing collapses. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's the guy that's on the thing that collapses.
Matrix. Well, they shot. Oh yeah. Oh man. Wow. I can't believe I didn't recognize him.
I know,
because they shot. Well,
right?
He's Aussie, and they shot all these movies in Australia, so it makes sense. But I love him. He's so great.
Yeah, he is.
Oh wow, that's so fun.
So then we get some more Smith. Again, he wants everything. He's the virus. We know this. So he kills the keymaker, and then Neo goes into the room, the door made of light, and we get to the architect. Now, what was your reaction the first time you saw this scene where, all this crazy shit is happening, the keymaker gets killed, Neo's going to fulfill his destiny, he's going to end the war, he's going to save everyone, and it's like a Colonel Sanders looking guy in a big white room with a bunch of screens.
I think when I saw this movie for the first time, I was in high school. I didn't pay attention to movies and wasn't as smart as I am right now. And it's like when Morpheus walks the audience through something, he walks the audience through something, and no matter if you're 10 or 100, you'll understand what he's talking about. But the dialogue that's written for the architect is so well written. Honestly, it's just so like his use of language is so educated and complex that it's like, I think when I saw it the first time, I was like, I have no idea what he's talking about. I have absolutely no idea what's going on here. Now that I do, I love that scene. That scene is to me like the Luke, I am your father scene. It's the scene where it's like everything you thought you knew about this world is wrong. Like, and not only that, but like everything sucks. Except in this case, it's not. Oh shit, my dad is the bad guy. It's oh shit, fate doesn't exist. Like I am literally just another cog in the machine. I was like literally I got here just so that I could pick a couple people to revive Scion with, and we could do this all again in like 100 years. It's like, that's my purpose. And it's crushing, honestly. Like it's a crushing scene because you're like, oh shit, like what now? Like, how do you beat that? How do you beat that level of inevitability, especially now that you're actually not that special, that you're not actually, Jesus or computer Jesus. Like it's a crazy scene, and it honestly, it makes it all the more satisfying when Neo decides to not go with it. It makes it all the more satisfying when he says like, no, fuck you, I'm going to save Trinity, I'm doing this my way. Because it's like, even though you're like, oh shit, now Zion's fucked, it's like it's like, no, Neo is unhinged. Like he is no longer playing a part in this big game that the machines have constructed to keep humanity sort of at bay, for their own personal gain. Like he's broken with that and now really can kind of do whatever he wants. So it's I think that scene which really makes Reloaded a great sequel. Like it does such a good job of redefining what the world is and really pulling the rug out from everybody, while also just like staying really true to the first movie's core themes of like free will and personal agency. So yeah, I love that scene. Also beautiful production design, all the TV screens around him.
Yeah. There is
know?
a moment in the first one where we see TV screens and everyone just sort of assumed it was, the FBI or the CIA or whatever, some government agency. But if you go back and look at the first movie, there's a scene where you see it looks like those exact same screens. So after seeing Reloaded, you can almost go back and just be like, oh, there's the architect. He's watching Neo as he's being interrogated by the agents inside the Matrix, kind of keeping tabs on things.
Yes.
But to your point of how
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, to your point of how this scene upends things, it sort of feels like, and to go back to the Star Wars sequel trilogy, it sort of feels like The Last Jedi, where you're like, okay, we have our Emperor figure here, Snoke, and it'll be the big thing with him and right in the next one, and they'll defeat him, and that'll be the end of it. And then, nope, they bisect him halfway through the movie, and then you're like, whoa, wait, what the hell? What are we doing now? What is even this next movie going to be?
Exactly.
Like, this is brand new territory. We're breaking the cycle of, the galaxy or the Matrix or whatever. And to all the critics who said that this movie, the writing in this scene is, pretentious or indecipherable or whatever. And it's like, well, he's talking like a machine. He's a machine. He's a program.
Exactly. Yes.
It's, if you listen and pay attention, it does all fit together, not only with what we learn in a few moments where it says that the process has altered your consciousness, how, the kind of almost to me hinting that the one has abilities that extend beyond the Matrix. There's something different about the person they've selected as the one that happens in the incubation process or something. But also he talks about the first Matrix, how it was sublime, kind of fitting in with what Smith said in the first movie about it being a paradise and the body trying to reject it. Like it was something we were trying to wake up from. The fact that all the previous ones apparently looked exactly like Neo, or at least all possible versions of it looked like Keanu Reeves, which makes everybody wonder whether he's playing a new version of Neo in Matrix 4, because Keanu has been seen with like a really short haircut now. So everybody's now wondering.
Yeah, that might be the case.
We're going to get the 7th Neo or whatever the case may be in the next film. So it really is. It's a real show-stopping scene. And I think it takes a few watches to really kind of digest it. But yeah, I think it completely holds together. And it is a real, rug puller. For this film. So then he goes and he saves Trinity, and his love for her is so strong that I don't even think he knew he could do this, but he reaches inside her body, pulls the bullet out, restarts her heart, because he loves her so damn much.
I think it's a great parallel to the end of the first movie, because that kind of happens. Because Trinity kind of does the same thing with Neo at the end of the first movie. He dies, and she basically, with her love, brings him back to life. So I loved that this movie ended with a sort of like a reversal or a callback back to that. It's like it just goes to show how strong those characters' relationships are, those characters have with each other, is that they're just like, they absolutely refuse to give up on each other. Like they're just like, no, you won't die, because this is not how it's supposed to happen. And it's it's just beautiful. And I'm reminded a lot of that I don't know if you saw Mission Impossible Fallout, but that whole idea of like I forgot what the line was specifically, but like saving the one life is the equivalent to saving all of the lives. Like it's all about saving that one life. And it's like I really felt that in this moment and then in this scene. It's like Neo has been told explicitly that if he saves Trinity, it'll cost the entire human race. But he's like, no, that the one life matters, like her life matters. And it does, because it's like without her, he wouldn't be able to save the world like he does at the end of the third movie. So it's like, this whole series is a really great examination into how decisions, how certain decisions spiral into other decisions, and how time works. And while it might seem like things don't make sense at the time that they happen, or that they go against sort of what our programming or our consciousness is, that at the end of the day, everything has a reason, everything has sort of something that it is building towards. And yeah, that's part of one of the many things that makes it such a cool series of movies.
Yeah. I think the only person well, not the only person, but what really the other emotional big impact that the finale of this movie hits with is Morpheus's reaction, because his whole life has been about this prophecy. It sort of drove him. His whole being was, the Oracle said, and again, it's sort of that you speak it and so it becomes true. That's the whole Oracle's whole thing. She's like, they put faith in her. She says, you're going to be the one to find the one. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to go look for the one, I guess, because that's what my destiny is, this lady said. And she seems to know what's what. Yeah. And then now for him to realize he was used just like everyone else was used to get them to that point. And he says that very, very kind of tragic Les Mis-esque, I have dreamed a dream, but now that dream is gone from me, which is really delivered with such poignancy by Laurence Fishburne. And you really feel the fact that like he everything, his entire purpose has been to bring the one to save Zion, and it's all bullshit. And I think that it really gives that character something interesting to reckon with.
Yeah. I love to, I love that it's like, Morpheus starts out the series believing in the one, and he ends the series not believing in the one, but believing in Neo. It's like, it's not about believing in the prophecy or what you've been told. It's about believing in him as a person. And it's like, that's what I love about the end of that movie, is it's like Morpheus has ostensibly lost all hope, but he keeps going because Neo's like, no, we have to keep going. We have to keep doing this. And I loved that Les Mis reference too. I think he says it specifically when the Nebuchadnezzar gets blown up, which is, it's emotional, because it's like, that was the ship that was the ship that the whole first movie was set on.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like you're reading my notes right now, Jackson. That's exactly what it was like the Millennium Falcon of this trilogy was the Nebuchadnezzar. And then no, poof, we're done. We're moving on from that.
I will say, I will say though, I do have a complaint about these movies. And sort of in relation to that is one of the few legit complaints that I have about them. You can't tell any of the ships apart. If you show me a picture of one of the ships and another one of the ships, I'd say that's the same thing. I think that's what Star Wars that's what Star Wars did really well, because it's like the Millennium Falcon is like its own shape. There's not another ship in that universe that looks like that. So it's like every time it comes on screen, instantly we see, oh, that's that ship. That means family, home, Han Solo, Leia, all these things. I think this series could have done really, because the ships do kind of become characters, especially in the third movie. It very much matters which ship each characters are on, and I it's the one design element that I got really frustrated with. I'm like, why couldn't you just make them look different? So every time we cut to it, I'm like, oh, that's that person's ship. That's Niobe's ship. That's Morpheus's ship. This is this person's ship. But anyway, one of the few complaints that I have with these movies. So
no, it's valid, completely valid. I think, there's certain homogenization to a lot of the elements of Zion that I'm sort of just like, oh, okay, I guess that's just kind of what they do. I mean, even the APU units, it feels just like completely from Aliens. And I know that was a kind of a complaint a lot of people had at the time. There's the design elements in the third one, I feel like, are lacking in a lot of ways, even though there is a lot of narrative stuff that still works. That being said, Neo stops the Sentinels, passes out, And then he's in a coma next to Bane, who's of course survived because he's got Smith on the brain. So there was a big, I don't know if this even ever occurred to you, but there was a big sort of fan theory in those 7 months, I guess, that percolated around between those movies, that the real world was going to be revealed to be like another version of the Matrix. So like a Matrix within a Matrix. Fair enough. I didn't say it was a good idea. I was just like, oh man, I hope that's not where they're going. Because like I said, I experienced
that sounds like
all the time.
That sounds like the kind of shit the internet would come up with. Yeah, that sounds about right. Unfortunately, but
all right, we'll cut off right there. That is more or less where we stopped talking about Reloaded. I know there was some crossover there as well with the Matrix Revolution seeping into that conversation. But just like these two movies are inextricably linked, so are these two episodes. But if you want to find Jackson on social media, you can find him over on Twitter at JacksonCSmith95. And Screen Fever's Twitter account at Real Screen Fever. And of course, just search YouTube for Screen Fever for the content that he and Adam have been putting on over there. And that'll be the end of this episode of the Crooked Table Podcast. Stay tuned for a bonus episode Stay tuned for an episode of bonus content from my conversation with Freddie Yanis on the original Matrix from last year. That'll be coming in a few days, followed by the Matrix Revolutions a week from this episode's posting. So enjoy all that, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CROOKED.